Some people get a text and move on. Some read it twice. Some feel something shift inside their chest. And then there's Jason. He got the text. He read it once. He believed it for about 10 minutes. That's when a photo landed in his phone. No warning. No context. Just an image that made the delayed flight story collapse in real time. That's where this story begins. This is the story of Jason Miller and his wife Chloe Miller. On the evening of March 14th, Jason received a message from Chloe at 7:02 p.m. It read, "Flight delayed. Probably won't be home until late. Don't wait up." He was sitting at the kitchen counter eating reheated pasta when it came through. According to him, he didn't feel anything unusual at first. He typed back a simple okay and went back to his food. This is what he shared. A man who, for exactly 10 minutes, had no idea his life was about to change direction quietly and permanently. Here's how he told it. This is how it happened. The pasta was cold by the time I finished it. Not because I forgot to eat, just because I kept getting distracted by small things. A notification here. The TV in the background. The kind of noise you fill a house with when it feels too quiet. Chloe traveled for work sometimes. Not constantly, but enough that a delayed flight wasn't unusual. She was in sales, regional accounts. She'd been doing it for about 3 years, and in that time I'd learned not to expect her home at any specific hour when she was traveling. So when the text came in, I didn't question it. I should have. We'd been married for 6 years, not perfect years, not terrible ones either. The kind of marriage that looks fine from the outside and feels fine most of the time, until you sit quietly with it and notice the parts that have gone a little cold, like food you forgot to warm up. Still there, still technically edible, just not what it used to be. Chloe was sharp, organized, the kind of person who had opinions about everything and wasn't shy about sharing them. I appreciated that about her early on. Later, it sometimes felt like being cross-examined for minor infractions, leaving a cabinet open, forgetting to confirm dinner plans. I wasn't innocent in any of this. I worked too much. I checked out during conversations sometimes. I let things slide that I should have addressed. We weren't a disaster. But we weren't close anymore either. Somewhere in the last 2 years, we'd become very good roommates who shared a last name. I'd noticed. I just hadn't said anything. The trip had started on a Wednesday. Chloe had a 2-day conference in Chicago. She had mentioned it the week before, written it on the shared calendar. Packed her bag the night before with the quiet efficiency she applied to everything. There was no drama in her departure. A hug at the door, a call me when you land. She did call. Brief conversation, nothing unusual. Thursday passed normally. I worked late, ordered food, watched something on TV that I don't even remember now. Friday she was supposed to fly back in the evening. Her flight was scheduled to arrive at 8:15. I'd been vaguely planning around that, thinking maybe we'd get a late dinner somewhere, try to do something normal together. Then the text came in at 7:42. Flight delayed. Probably won't be home until late. Don't wait up, I replied. Okay. I put my phone down. I started cleaning up the kitchen. At 7:51, my friend Marcus sent me a message. Not a text, a photo. No caption at first, just the image. And then maybe 30 seconds later, "Isn't that Chloe?" I looked at it for a long time, not because I wasn't sure. I was sure immediately. I've known Chloe for 8 years. I know how she stands. I know what she looks like when she laughs at something she actually finds funny versus when she's performing. In the photo, she was laughing. Actually laughing. She was at a bar, not in Chicago. The sign in the background was from a place downtown, 20 minutes from our house. A place called the Meridian that she'd told me she found pretentious the one time we went there together 2 years ago. She was sitting next to a man I didn't recognize. Their body language wasn't ambiguous. I don't know how to describe what I felt in that moment without making it sound bigger than it was. It wasn't a collapse. It wasn't rage. It was more like the moment when you realize you've been solving a puzzle wrong and all the pieces you forced into place suddenly make a different picture. I sat down on the couch. I looked at the photo again. Then I looked at the timestamp on her text, 7:42. The photo Marcus sent me was timestamped 7:48. 6 minutes between flight delayed and that photo. I texted Marcus back. "Where did you get this?" He said he was out with some people from his office. One of them had taken it because they recognized Chloe and thought it was funny that she was out the same night Marcus had mentioned to them I was home alone. Small world kind of coincidence. He wasn't trying to make anything of it. He was asking because he was confused. I told him not to say anything. He said he wouldn't. Then I put my phone face down on the coffee table and sat very still for a while. Here's the thing about that moment. My first instinct was to call her, to say something. To get the confrontation over with quickly. That's usually how I operate. Direct, clean. I don't enjoy prolonged tension. But I didn't call. I'm not entirely sure why. Something just told me to wait. To think. To actually understand what I was dealing with before I reacted. So instead of calling, I opened my laptop. I want to be honest about this next part because I think it matters. I wasn't in a clear-headed, strategic state of mind. I was hurt. I was angry in that very controlled way that sometimes feels calm from the outside but is actually just anger that hasn't found its shape yet. I started going back through things. Not because I had a plan. Just because I needed to understand the scope of what was happening. I looked at our credit card statements. We had a joint card and we each had individual cards as well. I pulled up the joint one first, nothing unusual. Then I pulled up the individual statement on her card. She'd added me as an authorized user a few years back, which meant I could still see it online. There were charges I didn't recognize. Not a lot, but enough. A restaurant I'd never heard of in February. A hotel charge in January. She'd told me she was visiting her college friend Dana that weekend. A few others that didn't line up with anything she'd mentioned. I sat there for about an hour just going through statements. I might be remembering this wrong, but I think the feeling wasn't even betrayal at that point. It was closer to embarrassment. That slow, quiet embarrassment of realizing that someone has been telling you a story, and you just kept believing it because you didn't have any reason not to. Around 10 o'clock, she texted again. Rebooked on a morning flight, staying at the airport hotel. I'll be home by noon, I replied. Okay, get some rest. I kept my phone face up this time. I watched the message sit there. I watched her read receipt appear. Then I turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. I didn't sleep. I've thought about this a lot since then, about that night specifically. There's something strange about knowing the truth and choosing not to announce it immediately. It gave me time I wouldn't have had otherwise. Time to think clearly, which I'm not always good at when emotions are running hot. Time to understand that whatever I did next was going to matter, not just emotionally, but practically. Because here's the part I hadn't fully confronted yet. Chloe and I had finances tied together in ways that would take real effort to untangle. We had a joint account we both contributed to. We had a mortgage in both names. She was on my health insurance through my employer. I was listed as a beneficiary on things of hers. We had a car payment that came out of the joint account. I wasn't thinking about divorce in some cold, strategic way, but I was thinking that if this was what I thought it was, and it clearly was, then I needed to protect myself, not out of anger, just out of basic self-preservation. So that night, while she was apparently at some bar 20 minutes away pretending to be stranded at an airport, I made a list. Not dramatic, just a list. Things I needed to understand, things I needed to document, questions for a lawyer. I'd never talked to a divorce attorney before. I had no idea how any of it worked. By the time it was 2 a.m., I'd filled 3 pages. She came home the next day around noon, exactly when she said she would. I was in the kitchen making lunch when she walked in with her bag. She looked tired, but the kind of tired that's actually just slightly hungover and trying to pass for travel fatigue. She hugged me. It lasted about 3 seconds. How was it? I asked. Exhausting, she said. The conference was fine. The flight situation was a nightmare. I bet, I said. I handed her a glass of water. She took it without noticing anything in my face. Or maybe she noticed and decided she didn't need to worry about it. We had lunch together. She told me about the conference, specific details, sessions she'd attended. A colleague who'd said something irritating during a panel. She was good at the details. I gave her that. I listened. I asked questions. I nodded in the right places. I didn't say anything. That afternoon, she went upstairs to unpack and shower. I sat at the kitchen counter and checked my phone. I'd reached out to a lawyer that morning, sent an email through a contact form at a family law office downtown. They'd already replied asking to set up a consultation. I replied and confirmed for Monday morning. Then I opened my phone and scrolled back to the photo Marcus had sent me. I looked at it one more time. The man she was with was maybe my age, broad shoulders, laughing at something she'd said. His hand wasn't on her in the photo, but the space between them was the kind of close that tells you something. I saved the photo. I took a screenshot of her 7:42 text. I noted the timestamp on the photo, 7:48. 6 minutes. I don't know, maybe like this story or subscribe or something. I'll keep going. The following week was one of the stranger weeks of my life. We went about everything normally. Dinner on Tuesday. She worked late Thursday. We watched a show together on Friday night and she fell asleep on the couch around 10. I covered her with a blanket and went to bed. Normal life, on the surface. Underneath it, I was doing things I'd never done before. I had the Monday consultation with the lawyer, which lasted about 90 minutes. She was direct and thorough, and gave me a clear picture of how things would likely go if we separated. She also told me some steps I could take immediately that weren't aggressive but were protective. I started those steps. I opened a separate personal account at a different bank. I moved a portion of my direct deposit there. Nothing dramatic, just restructuring. I requested records. Specific credit card activity, a few itemized bills. I wasn't building a case for some courtroom drama. I was just making sure I understood the truth fully before I said anything out loud. Chloe, during this time, was completely normal. That was the part I kept coming back to. She was fine. She came home on time. She made conversation. She complained about the same things she usually complained about. She suggested we repaint the guest room. She asked if I wanted to go to her cousin's wedding in June. I said sure. I watched her. Not in a suspicious way, in a confused way. Trying to understand how this works. How a person compartmentalizes so cleanly. Maybe I'd been doing the same thing for 2 years and just didn't realize it. I'd noticed the distance between us. I'd filed it under "we're both busy" and left it there. Maybe she'd been doing something more deliberate and I just wasn't paying attention. About 10 days after she came home, Marcus sent me another message. Not a photo this time, just a name. He said he'd looked into it a little, not intrusively, just that someone at his office knew something. The man in the photo was named Derek Shaw, worked in commercial real estate, had apparently been at the Meridian that night with a group. Marcus said he was sorry. He said he didn't know how long it had been going on. I thanked him and told him to leave it alone. Then I looked up Derek Shaw, LinkedIn, professional headshot, 40-year-old, based locally, divorced 2 years ago. No obvious connection to Chloe's industry or social circle that I could find publicly, which meant they'd met somewhere else. I thought about that for a while. How do two people meet when there's no obvious overlap? It usually means effort. It usually means it didn't happen by accident. That was the part that settled something in me. Not the physical part of the betrayal. That hurt, but I could hold it. What I couldn't quite absorb was the amount of deliberate deception involved, the fake conferences, the fake layovers. Whatever story she'd built, that took sustained effort over time. That meant she'd chosen to do this every day for however long it had been going on. I decided to say something on a Sunday. 3 weeks after she came home with her rolling bag and her conference stories. I'd spent those 3 weeks getting things in order. Not weaponizing, just organizing. Financial accounts restructured. Consultation done. Documentation saved. The photo. The text timestamps. The hotel receipt from January. The restaurant charges. I wasn't trying to humiliate her. I wasn't interested in a scene. I just wanted the truth. And I wanted her to know that I already had it before she tried to give me a different version. It was a quiet morning. Coffee. She was reading something on her phone. I sat down across from her. "I want to talk to you," I said. She looked up. "Okay. I need you to be honest with me." She put her phone down. Something shifted in her face, not panic, just a kind of stillness. "About what?" "March 14th, I said. She didn't say anything for a moment. "Then, what about it? Your flight wasn't delayed." She held my eyes for a second. Then she looked down at the table. "Jason, I'm not asking you to explain yet," I said. "I'm just telling you that I know. I've known since that night." Silence. She didn't cry immediately. She looked like she was running calculations, trying to figure out what I knew and how I knew it, and whether there was a version of this she could still manage. I took out my phone and put it on the table. The photo from Marcus, the timestamp on her text, the hotel receipt, the restaurant charge from February. I laid them out one at a time, the way you'd put documents in front of someone in a meeting. Calm. Methodical. She looked at each one. By the time I'd put down the fourth thing, she'd stopped calculating. "How long?" I asked. She was quiet for a long time. "About 8 months, she said. I nodded. "Is it Derek Shaw?" I asked. She looked up sharply. Then she looked back down. "Yes." "Okay," I said. I think she expected more from that moment, some kind of escalation. Maybe she wanted me to shout, so she'd have something to push back against. Instead, I just sat there. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," I said. "I've already started separating some things. I want to do this as cleanly as possible, and I'd like you to be willing to do the same." She was crying now, quietly, not dramatically. "Jason, I'm sorry. I know you are," I said. "But I need you to understand that I've already processed most of this. I've had 3 weeks. You're just getting here now." She looked at me. I think that's when it hit her that I hadn't been surprised on this particular Sunday morning. The surprise had happened weeks ago, on a Friday night. while I was eating cold pasta. "You've been talking to a lawyer for 3 weeks," she said, not accusing, just absorbing it. "Since the Monday after you came home," I said. She asked me a few questions. How did I find out? What did the lawyer say? Whether I was angry? I answered the first two honestly. For the third one I said I was. I'm not anymore. I'm mostly just done. That was the truest thing I said that morning. Anger had visited and left. What remained was something more like clarity. That flat, clean feeling of a decision that's already been made. She asked if there was any chance we could talk through things, work on it. I said I didn't think so. She nodded slowly. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "I'm going to need some time to figure out where I'm going," she said. "I know," I said. "That's fine." She moved out within 2 weeks. She stayed with her sister temporarily. Derek Shaw, I later found out, hadn't left his situation in whatever way she might have been expecting. That wasn't something I dwelt on. It wasn't my business. The legal process started. My attorney said it was straightforward given the documentation and the financial steps I'd taken early. No dramatic courtroom moments, just paperwork and timelines. Chloe was cooperative. I think she understood she wasn't in a position to be otherwise. 3 months later, I ran into someone from Chloe's social circle. A woman named Priya who'd been a bridesmaid at our wedding. We crossed paths at a coffee shop. She was polite but clearly a little uncomfortable. Before we parted ways, she said very carefully, "I hope you're okay. I know it's been a lot." "I'm good," I said. She nodded. Then, almost to herself, she said it was complicated, that you'd grown apart. I didn't respond to that. I ordered my coffee and said it was good to see her. I've thought about that framing a lot since then. We grew apart. It's a clean sentence. Passive. Nobody did anything. It just happened, the way weather happens, the way seasons change. It protects a version of herself that she clearly needed to hold on to. And maybe there's some partial truth in it. We had grown apart. Something had gone quiet between us over a couple of years, and neither of us had moved urgently to fix it. That part wasn't entirely her. But growing apart and deciding to lie for 8 months aren't the same thing. She didn't leave because we grew apart. She stayed while building something else on the side. She stayed through dinners and TV shows and conversations about repainting the guest room. She suggested going to her cousin's wedding in June while all of this was already in motion. Those aren't the actions of someone who'd grown apart. Those are the actions of someone who hadn't decided yet. I don't say that bitterly. I say it because I think it matters to understand the difference. Not for her sake, for mine. Because when you accept a cleaner story than the truth, you don't actually heal from the right thing. You just smooth over the surface and wonder later why the ground still feels uneven. The real version is harder to hold, but it's the only one that actually explains what happened. Derek Shaw did not, as far as I can tell, become the person she'd anticipated. I heard through an indirect route, someone telling someone who mentioned it, without realizing I'd care, that things between them had been inconsistent after I was out of the picture. No longer something conducted in the margins of someone else's life. It apparently had a different quality in daylight. I'm not saying that to feel vindicated. I'm saying it because I think it's an honest part of the story. Affairs are often conducted in a kind of emotional climate that doesn't survive the transition to ordinary life. The version of someone you meet in a stolen hour at a downtown bar is not necessarily the same person you live with every day. Chloe was smart enough to know that. I think she always knew that. I think she just convinced herself that this one would be different. About 4 months after she moved out, she sent me a long email. It was carefully written. The kind of email where you can tell every sentence was revised. She said she'd been thinking a lot. She said she understood the damage she'd done. She said she wasn't asking for anything, not forgiveness, not a second chance. She just wanted me to know that she knew it had been wrong, that the way she'd handled everything had been wrong. She said she hoped I was doing okay. I read the email twice. Then I wrote back a single line. "I appreciate you sending this. Take care of yourself." She didn't reply to that. I didn't expect her to. I've been careful, through all of this, not to turn Chloe into a cartoon. She wasn't a villain. She was a person who made a sustained bad decision and then, when it collapsed, had to face the version of herself that had made it. That's hard. I'm not immune to having sympathy for how hard that is. But sympathy and reconciliation are different things. I could hold one without offering the other. The divorce was finalized on a Wednesday in early September. No ceremony in that. Just a call from my attorney telling me the paperwork had gone through. I was at my desk at work. I thanked her. I hung up. I went back to what I was doing. There was no relief exactly. More like the lifting of a background noise you'd gotten so used to, you'd stopped noticing it. I kept the house for a while, then sold it about 6 months later. Not because of bad memories specifically, more because it was too large for one person, and the maintenance was more than I wanted to deal with alone. I moved into an apartment closer to the city. Smaller, easier. The first night there, I ordered food and sat on the floor because I hadn't gotten furniture yet. It sounds worse than it was. There was something almost restful about it. Starting from a smaller point, I still talk to Marcus. He never made a big thing of what happened. He'd sent that photo because he was confused and didn't know what to do with what he was seeing. He wasn't trying to blow anything up. I told him once, over drinks, that I was glad he sent it, that knowing sooner had mattered, that the 3 weeks between finding out and confronting Chloe had been important. He said he hoped so. He seemed like he'd been carrying some guilt about it. "You didn't do anything wrong," I told him. He nodded, but I don't think he fully believed me. The last time I saw Chloe was at a mutual friend's birthday gathering about a year after the divorce. I hadn't known she'd be there. Neither had she known about me, from what I could tell. We both arrived around the same time and caught eyes across the room in that moment before either person decides how to handle it. She walked over. That surprised me a little. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I said. "You look good," she said. "Thanks, so do you." We stood there for a moment with nothing in particular to say. "I'm glad it wasn't worse," she said finally. "The way things went." I thought about that for a second. "Yeah," I said. "Me too." She nodded. She went to find a drink. I went to say hello to the friend whose birthday it was. We didn't speak again that evening. I've thought about that exchange a few times since. I'm glad it wasn't worse. It's an odd thing to say, but I think I understood what she meant. She meant, I'm glad there wasn't destruction. She meant, I'm glad you were the kind of person who didn't make it a war. I chose not to make it a war because I didn't have the energy for one. But also because I genuinely didn't believe destroying her was the point. The point was getting out cleanly, getting back to something real. I don't think about Derek Shaw at all. He was a name, a photo, a detail in a story that was never really about him. I think about what the marriage was in its last couple of years. The particular silence of two people who've stopped reaching toward each other. The way that silence compounds slowly until it's just the ambient temperature of your life. I should have said something sooner, I'm aware of that. Not to excuse what she did, she made her own choices. But I was a participant in the conditions that existed between us. I let things drift because addressing them felt harder than absorbing them. I don't think I'd do that again. The apartment I moved into had a kitchen window that looked out onto a quiet street. Most mornings I'd make coffee and stand at that window for a few minutes before work, just watching things. Nothing specific. There was something grounding about it, something ordinary. I'd spent so long in a house that felt like a performance, both of us keeping up appearances of a marriage that had mostly gone quiet. That ordinary felt like something I'd been missing without knowing it. I wasn't happy in some large announced way. I was just okay for a while. That was enough. And honestly, looking back on all of it now, the cold pasta, the photo, the 3 weeks of silence, the Sunday morning with the documents laid out on the table, I don't think I handled any of it perfectly. I waited too long before saying something during the marriage. I let the distance grow because naming it felt too uncomfortable. And when the end came, I handled it carefully and protectively, but also with a kind of coldness that I've had to sit with. There's no version of this that leaves everyone clean, but there's a version where you get out with your honesty intact, where you don't set fire to everything just because you have the matches. I tried to find that version. I think most days I did.